Hello and welcome to another Seth stream. Yes, indeed, I am doing this live as a stream again because I happen to be healthy enough to do it. For how long will that last? Who knows, but we shall take advantage of it now, as long as it does. So we will be continuing our analysis of Volume 2 of The Unknown Reality, a Seth book by Jane Roberts. Okay. Audio is working. And hopefully all goes well. I don't know if I'm gonna always stream these again, but we shall see. Hey there, Ryan. Good evening. Thank you for joining. I hope you're doing well. And all right, let's get right into it. So we're actually resuming with section 6 of the entire unknown reality book. Like if you combine volumes 1 and 2, this is section 6 that is in volume 2, each volume having 3 sections. And it is entitled Reincarnation and Counterparts, the quote-unquote past seen through the mosaics of consciousness. Doing well, thank you, Mr. Poetic. You are welcome. I'm doing fairly well as well. At least today I am. That's why I'm live streaming. All right, let's get right into it. Session 727, January 6th, 1975, 9:11 p.m., Monday. Jane held her last session for Unknown Reality 3 weeks ago. She came through with a private session 2 days later, on December 18th, and we've been resting from psychic work, including ESP class, since then. All the time, we were unaware that Seth had finished Section 5. At the start of this same period, my own inner adventures stopped completely, as though hidden by a curtain closing on a stage. They have yet to resume, and I miss them. Today I finished the 23rd drawing out of 40 for Jane's dialogues. Good evening, Seth. Dictation. The next section, 6, will be titled Reincarnation and Counterparts, the past seen through the mosaics of consciousness. Give us a moment. In your terms, the land changes through the ages. Mountains and islands arise, then disappear to reemerge in new form. The oceans rise and fall also, and in some cases the floor of the ocean becomes the surface of the planet, only to be covered again by water. Yet through all of these changes, the Earth retains a landscape, and at any given time the features of the land are quite dependable and permanent enough for your purposes. Pause. So the islands that I spoke about in our last session rose up from beneath the sea. Even as the dialogue of those islands took place, the islands themselves were changing. In somewhat the same way, the psyche sends up counterparts of itself, each with different features or characteristics. As the physical properties of the Earth distribute themselves in a certain given fashion about the surface of the planet, so do the properties of the Earth-tuned psyches distribute themselves. Period. As all physical matter is connected in any particular time or era, so the individual consciousness of each being is also connected with every other. This applies to underlined all consciousnesses as you understand that term. A mountain is composed of many layers of rock that serve, as you think of it, as its foundation. The top of the mountain represents the present to you, and the tiers of rock beneath stand for the past. The mountain itself is not any one of those rock layers that seemingly compose it, however. There is a relationship between the mountain and those strata, but the term mountain is one that you have applied. In greater terms, the mountain and all of its components exist at once, of course. You can examine the various levels of rock structure. Geologists can tell when, in terms of time, certain sedimentary deposits formed. The rocks themselves still exist in the geologist's present time, or they could not make such an examination. The mountain would not be a mountain without that quote-unquote foundation. Again, however, it is not any one of those rock layers. Now, in underlined somewhat the same manner, The self that you know is the mountain, and the rock layers forming it are past lives. Underlined, you are not any of those past selves, even though they are a part of the history of your being. They are themselves in their own space and time. They exist simultaneously with your own life, even as the strata of rock exist simultaneously with the mountain. Your present existence, however, is highly related to those other levels of selfhood. Now, what happens at the top of the mountain affects all that goes on below, and so everything that you do affects those other realms of selfhood, and there is an interchange that occurs constantly. Physical conditions may be quite different in the valley, in the foothills of the mountain, and at its top. The very climate and vegetation may vary considerably, and yet all life and vegetation within the area are interrelated. Each layer of life that composes the mountain is life the word you want used there? This is a question that Rob is interjecting into Seth's dialogue. This is one of the few times I've interrupted Seth during his presentation of unknown reality. Now back to Seth. Yes, underlined life that composes the mountain is equally valid and important, and each concentrates upon its own reality at its own level. Like the mountain, therefore, you have a history in terms of the present that is yours, and yet not yours. It does not control you, for you alter it with each thought and action, even as each motion at the mountain's top affects its base. The layers at the bottom, however, are also constantly changing, so that the whole area is a gestalt of relatedness. Pause at 943. In the physical world, islands, valleys, plateaus, continents, and oceans all have their place, and serve to form the physical basis of your reality. Each blade of grass helps form the life of the earth. So each consciousness, however minute, is underlined indispensable in its place and time. Each flower on a hillside looks out with its own unique vision of the world, and each consciousness does the same thing, fulfilling a position underlined impossible for any other consciousness to fulfill. Most emphatically, in terms of time only, there is an archaeological meaning that is hidden within your own nature. To discover it, you look, quote unquote, down through the levels of your own being, there to find the layers of selfhood that in your world represent the past history of yourself from which you emerged. You are not those selves psychically, however, any more than you are your mother's or your father's in physical terms. You are as different from those reincarnational selves, therefore, as you are from your parents, though you share certain backgrounds and characteristics. It is easy for you to see how you affect your parents in your lifetime, though they are older than you. In the same way, however, you affect your reincarnational family. Pause. When it rains, water rushes in great exuberant gushes down the sides of the mountain, bringing life and vitality to all of its parts. In somewhat the same way, your own experiences flow down and into the cracks and crevices of all the other times and centuries that compose your present lifetime. With a smile. I have a surprise for you, however, for I have been speaking of you as the underlined top of our mountain, for it certainly seems to you that you underlined are at the top, so to speak. Instead, your vantage point and your focus is such that you cannot turn your head to look higher. Perhaps you are like a fine sunny cliff on the underlined side of the mountain, jutting out, looking down to the valley beneath, not realizing that the mountain itself continues up beyond you. You are, then, in the position of any of the other levels, quote unquote, beneath, many also thinking themselves the top of the mountain, looking only downward. You are convinced that you cannot see the future, and this means, in terms of our analogy at least, that you cannot look upward beyond your own time. While that is the case, you will always think of reincarnation as occurring in the past. Very definitely at 10:02. Think instead of strata of being, each simultaneously occurring. Physically, the human fetus bears a memory of its quote-unquote past. Footnote. For Seth on the fetus, its astral and reincarnational attributes, its energy, its growth, its perceptions from inside the womb, See the quotations from sessions 503 through 4 in the appendix for the Seth material. Those sessions were held in September 1969. End of footnote. In your terms, it travels through the stages of evolution before attaining its human form. It underlined attains that form, however, underlined because it responds to a future time, a future self not as yet physically created. All of that was underlined. Also, footnote. See the 683rd session in Volume 1 of Unknown Reality. As Seth told us, all kinds of time, backward and forward, emerge from the basic unpredictable nature of consciousness and are due to quote-unquote series of significances. Memory operates backward and forward in time. In Appendix 12 and its notes, there are a number of passages from Seth, as well as a few of my own, that supplement his remarks in this 727th session on present form responding to a future time. See, for instance, the quotations from the 690th session in Volume 1. Seth discussed the ability of our species to precognitively alter the present from the future. Molecular biology and precognition are also referred to. Then see Note 17 for Appendix 12, wherein biological precognition and the cellular manipulation of probabilities are mentioned. Other related material on reprogramming the past can be found in Chapter 14 of Personal Reality. See sessions 653 through 55. End of footnote. The fetus itself, underlined before its conception, responds to a self not yet physically apparent. In the future, in those terms, draws new life from the past, a reality of selfhood, an idea not yet materialized in the unformed future, reaches down into the past and brings that future into realization. The cells are imprinted with physical information in terms of space and time, but those data came from a reality in which space and time are formed. Footnote. In the 684th session for Volume 1, Seth came through with one of my favorite statements, even if it is grammatically incorrect. Quote, "The cells precognate," end quote. Much of his material in that session applies here. Quote, "It is truer to say that heredity operates from the future backward into the past," end quote. At 1048 in the 705th session for Volume 2, see Seth's remarks on introducing quote-unquote new genetic information into a damaged cell. A time reversal principle is involved. End of footnote. And in answer to my second question of the evening, Seth told me that he wanted the word formed used in the last sentence, just as he'd given it. The knowledge of probabilities brings forth present time and reality. Footnote. I suggest reviewing Seth's excellent material on probabilities, cellular consciousness, the moment point, and related concepts in the 681st session for Volume 1. End of footnote. Voices speak through the genes and chromosomes that connect the future and the past in a balance that you underlined call the present form. The history of the private psyche and the mass experience of the species, again, resides in each individual. The archaeology of the past and the future alike is alive within the layers of consciousness that compose your being. Take your break. 1013 to 1031. Now, give us a moment. In many ways, your language itself has a history that you do not understand. Footnote. Seth delivered much material on language in the 723rd session. Also see Note 4 for the same session. End of footnote. The past is obviously built into words in terms of time. When you speak a given word, you may not know the history of its changes through the years, yet you speak it perfectly. You seldom realize that the present state of your language, whatever it is, will for others someday seem to be an archaic version. In whatever terms, again, you think of yourselves as being at the top of the mountain. In your terms, language presupposes a particular kind of development of mind, and when you think of language, you tie the two together. There are languages that have nothing to do with words, or with thoughts as you understand them, yet some of these communicate in a far more precise fashion. Cellular transmission, for example, is indeed much more precise than any verbal language, communicating data so intricate that all of your languages together would fall far short of matching such complexity. Footnote. Currently, there are close to 6,000 languages and dialects in use around the world. End of footnote. This kind of communication carries information that 1,000 alphabets could not translate. In such a way, one part of the body knows what is happening in every other part, and the body as a whole knows its precise position on the surface of the planet. It is biologically aware of all the other life forms around it to the most minute denominator. This applies to the future as well as to the past. The body itself knows the source of water, for example, and food. Natives divorced from your technology do very well, as wild animals also do, in probing the life of the planet and their positions within it. A simple tree deals with the nature of probabilities as it thrusts forward into new seeds. Computations go on constantly within it, and that communication involves an inner kind of language innocent of symbols and vowels. The tree knows its present and future history, in your terms, but it understands a future that is not preordained. Footnote. Seth's material on trees reminded me of his 18th session for January 22nd, 1964. It made a lasting impression upon me. It's full of evocative statements that were new to us at the time, since the sessions were barely underway. Quote, as to Jane's feeling about trees having a certain kind of consciousness, of course this is the case. The tree is dissociated in one manner. It is in a state of drowsiness on the one hand, and on the other it focuses the usable portion of its energy into being a tree. The inner senses of the tree have a strong affinity with the properties of the earth itself. They feel they're growing as you listen to your heartbeat. They also experience pain, which, while definite, unpleasant, and sometimes agonizing, is not of an emotional nature in the same way that you might feel pain. It is as if your breath were to be suddenly cut off. A tree knows human beings also, by the vibrations in the air as they pass, which hit the tree's trunk from varying distances, and even by such things as voices. The tree does not build up an image of man, but a composite sensation which represents an individual, and the same tree will recognize the same person who passes it by each day. End quote. Makes me wonder if my plants that I have sitting over there on my windowsill are aware of me on some level in this way. I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow are. Jane knows she wrote the following poem early in 1964, but isn't sure whether she did so before or after delivering the 18th session for Seth. As far as I'm concerned, at least, it hardly matters which came first. I like the poem as much as I do the session. The trees in the forest. The trees in the forest stand secret and silent, their voices suspended in lungs of leaves that only can whisper of dreams held dormant, that breathe only once in 1,000,000 years. Deep is the sleep of the moss and the pebble, long is the trance of the grass and the meadow. Footfalls come and footfalls pass, but no sound can break that green-eyed trance. Not a bad poem. Makes me wonder if our climbing tree at the farm feels the same. It may very well. That's something I've thought of for years, actually, is just wondering if whenever I walk by trees or like walk in the woods or whatever, if if the trees are aware of myself and others on some level. And just living with these plants for the past like 6 months, I'll often find myself looking at them and wondering, like, what is it like to be a plant? I mean, what's it like to sit there all day and just sort of be very still, but slowly growing and like feel the sunlight and then feel when it goes away at night and then feel what it's like to be watered occasionally. You know, what is that like? Maybe in my next life will be a plant. We always had plenty of houseplants of various kinds. Yeah, I enjoy my succulents. I'd probably have a lot more if I felt like I could take care of them all properly, but I don't know if I could. One might say that Seth continued his own tree data almost 5 years later, in the 453rd session for December 4th, 1968. Jane presented that rather brief session in full in the appendix for the Seth material, but from it I'd like to quote these lines. Quote, "To your way of thinking, some lives are lived in a twinkling in various systems, and others last for centuries. The perception of consciousness is not limited, however. I have told you, for example, that trees have their own consciousness. The consciousness of a tree is not as specifically focused as your own, yet to all intents and purposes, the tree is conscious of 50 years before its existence and 50 years hence." That's interesting. Its sense of identity spontaneously goes beyond the change of its own form. It has no ego to cut the I identification short. Creatures without the compartment of the ego can easily follow their own identity beyond any change of form. End quote. The implications within that last sentence are obviously enormous. End of footnote. Wow, fascinating stuff. So where were we? My mom is very protective of her plants, and even my dad has a favorite tree planted by the garage, so that's cool. Yeah, I'm definitely protective of my plants as well. I'm like, I will ensure that I take care of these things. Besides, there's like a mutually beneficial relationship. I take care of them, and in return, they provide me with more fresh air, more oxygen. It's good for your mental health. They transmute negative energy into positive energy. I mean, plants do all kinds of wonderful stuff. I just love plants. All right, let's see. It feels its own power in the present as it constructs that future. In deeper terms, the tree's seeds also realize that there is a future there, a variety of futures toward which they grope. The fetus also understands that it can respond to a stimulus, to any stimulus it chooses, from a variety of probable futures. So do you unconsciously grope toward probable futures that to one extent or another beckon you onward. Long pause at 10:50. Give us a moment. 10:52. You choose your futures, but you also choose your pasts. There is only so much that I can say, since I am using a verbal language that in itself makes a tyrant of time. This book is paced in such a way, however, that if you follow it, an inner language will be initiated. This in itself annihilates your stereotyped concepts and releases you from time's dictatorship. Some of the exercises to be given in this section will be geared to that purpose. An archaeologist or a geologist examining quote unquote old rock strata will find dead fossils, just as from your viewpoint you will discover quote unquote dead past lives as you look quote unquote downward through your psyche. You will seem to view finished reincarnational existences, even as from his present the geologist will discover only inanimate fossils embedded in rock. Those fossils are still alive, however. The geologist is simply not tuned into their life area. So reincarnational lives are still occurring, but they are a part of your being. They are not you, and you are not your reincarnational past. Wonder what a houseplant subreddit or fandom looks like. That's a good question. A negative energy, you say, feels like I'm being sold a plant by a door-to-door plant salesman. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of great things about them. I mean, some of those things I can't prove, but I feel like intuitively. All I know is my like mental and physical health, even with my challenges, have improved ever since I got some plants in here. And it feels like there's a direct connection, though of course I cannot prove that. To a future self no more illuminated than you appear dead and lifeless, a dim memory. When you look out into the universe from your viewpoint, it underlined seems as if you look into the past. Footnote. See Seth's first delivery for the 712th session, with notes 1, 2, and 4, among others. End of footnote. Scientists tell you that when the light from every distant galaxy reaches you, the galaxy is already dead. In the same way, when you look quote-unquote backward into the psyche, the life you may indistinctly view, the past life, is already vanished. Why is it that your scientists' instruments do not allow them to look into the underlined future instead, into worlds not yet born, since they operate so well in discerning the past? And why is it, with all of your ideas about reincarnation, there is precious little said about future lives? Footnote. Seth's point that there is precious little said about future lives is well taken. It's one that Jane and I feel pretty much alone with. Others don't initiate the idea in discussions with us, for instance. In a very casual way lately, I've been trying to tune into a quote-unquote future existence so that I can do some writing and drawing about it, but haven't made any meaningful contact so far. I've become quite interested in such an achievement in view of my recent but very limited successes in touching upon several personal quote-unquote past involvements, the 2 nameless Roman soldiers and the woman called Maumee. I don't know how to say this. Maumee. However you would say that. I think I'd come up with a way to say that last time when I did the last video of this, but I can't remember what it was, but whatever that name is. The idea of trying to reach a future self has been with me for some 3.5 years, though, or since I first encountered Nabeen, that male personality who inhabits a distant niche in my psychic past. One of the Roman soldiers, Maumee, and Nabeen are mentioned in Appendix 21. See the excerpts there from the private session for November 18th, 1974, as well as Note 1. Then see the comment Seth made in the next evening in ESP class. Quote, "There are, of course, future memories as well as past ones. As Joseph often says, when you think of reincarnation, you do so in terms of underlined past lives. You are afraid to consider future lives because then you have to face the death that must be met first, in your terms. And so you never think of future lives or how you might benefit from knowing them." End quote. End of footnote. The answer is that your language is limited. Your underlined verbal language for your biological communication is quite aware of probable future events, and the body constantly maintains itself amid a maze of probabilities. 1105. Give us a moment and rest your hand. Actually, this was the end of book dictation for the evening. After giving half a page of information about another matter, Seth closed out the session at 11:12 p.m. All right, that is the end of that session indeed. So let's see. The next one, it says, would take 27 minutes to read. Well, I hate to say it, but I feel like I've kind of had enough for tonight. I'm feeling a little bit tired of reading. So I guess this will just be a sort of short but sweet little live stream. So, all right, well, I'll make a few closing remarks here in a moment. After giving a preview of what we can expect next time. And if you don't want to listen to my closing remarks, that's totally fine. Like if you're just interested in the material, feel free to click off of this, like if you're watching it now or after the fact. But if you do want to listen to my closing remarks, I'll be making them here in just a moment. So let's see. But for next time, let's see. Usually we cover 2 sessions in one stream / or video, whatever it ends up being. So the next one, session 728, it says precognition as a stimulus to growth, the varieties of time within 1 year. And then session 729, it says astrology, probabilities, and inner triggering, the stars and planets as consciousnesses. Boy, oh boy, that's going to be an interesting one for me. Hey there, Liz. Like the end that I caught. Thank you. Actually, that's what I'm concerned about, to be quite frank, with streaming this again. I'm worried that not enough people are interested in this material and that I'm like driving viewers away. So I feel a little iffy about streaming this, and maybe I almost think maybe I should stream other stuff, but I don't know. We'll see what happens, and I'll think about that more over time. So anyway, for those who are interested exclusively in the Seth material, thanks for watching. That's it. Now I'm going to make a few closing comments on a little bit more of a personal note for those who are curious about the shenanigans going on in my life. So my health still sucks, but it was good enough today that I was able to stream, obviously. So I guess that's a good thing. How much did I even update it recently in the last one? I can't remember, but basically I still have a couple more tests to get done with the doctor and stuff like that. That shit's still being figured out. I'm still far from being better. Today I did confront my therapist about some intense matters, as some of you might recall my talking about before, and it went surprisingly well. He seemed seemed genuinely sorry for the things that I confronted him about, stuff that I was upset about. And well, I mean, it's hard to tell the reality of the situation, but he seems genuine enough. And so I guess I'm going to keep returning, because the way I see it, either he's telling the truth, in which case that's good, and then I'll still get what I need out of therapy, or he's lying. But even if he's lying, he'll still have to keep pretending like he's telling the truth, meaning he'll still have to at least try to help me deal with my issues to make it seem like he's not lying. So then I would still get like benefit from it. So it's like either way, it'll work out well for me. So I'm just like, all right, whatever. I'll keep going to therapy. So that, I don't know. That turned out surprisingly well. I literally thought today was probably, well, I thought it may very well be the last session. But yes, I hope that went okay. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it did. Glad it worked out. Thank you, Liz. I am too. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think live streaming itself may energize me, because I've noticed that whenever I spend time around people, that energizes me. And I think that's probably one of my biggest problems is too much isolation. And it's something I'm working on, but it's not like I'm isolating myself by choice, or at least not consciously. But it's just it's more like it's so damn hard to find like ways to communicate with other people. But I was thinking about it earlier, and I thought, it almost seems like live streaming. Like, even though this isn't in person, it almost seems like, since I'm interacting with people, that this somehow energizes me as well. So I might try to like push myself to keep live streaming, even just for that reason, as well as all the other usual reasons that I like to stream. So anyway, I have a little mini story about getting away from isolation. Poetic. Oh, good. Let's hear it. In the meantime, does anyone else have any comments or questions before I get moving? Cool. It's fun to be able to engage with you too. Thank you so much, Liz. Yeah, I really liked the last stream I did that I then made unlisted. I liked how it kind of turned into all of us just kind of chatting for a while. I like doing that, but I feel like I couldn't do that all the time because I'd run out of things to talk about. So, but maybe every once in a while, if I have something to say or have something to talk about, then I'll do that. But yeah, now's your chance. If you want to ask me anything or talk about anything, whatever, feel free. Drinking green tea as usual. Friday night, my friend took me out to a new nightclub. Now, I never go out to bars or clubs, period, unless I'm attending a local concert to support my friends. I'm intrigued. Yeah, I've got to get around other people more. And I was thinking before that I probably need to that I needed to spend more time around people in person, but then I was like, no, wait a minute. Whenever I've talked to people on the phone, that's always energized me too. We went to the Church of John, pronounced Church of John. Interesting. That concludes my ginger tea. Yeah, won't it be interesting a couple sessions from now hearing Seth get into astrology? Oh boy. And it was a very nice club, and while waiting in line, I noticed an upside down cross in the club's logo. Ooh, the plot thickens. What's going to happen? Just multitasking here a little bit. Was also thinking maybe I'll start doing live tarot readings again, but I'm a little bit nervous about that. Like those streams can get rather intense sometimes. I made a passing comment jokingly about maybe it's a pro Satanist club. Haha. Oh boy, I bet this is going to be good. Where is this going? It's also funny, my tarot reading today was so spot on. Like my daily tarot reading that I give myself, it was so spot on for the sort of confrontation that I guess I had. Tower card is a challenge card, death card in the near future. Can't remember if I remembered to give this stream a like myself or not. Okay, I did. Good. I meant to say one of your past readings for me came true. Oh, really, Liz? Well, I'm happy to hear that. I hope it was a good reading. I hope it was something positive that came true, not something negative, as is the case half the time with readings, it seems. Yeah, well, I always do the best I can with my readings, though my disclaimer is I don't claim to be infallible. Like I don't claim to be beyond mistakes, but my personal readings for myself are generally very accurate. I can say that. Walked into the club. Now this entire building is painted black. Outside on the facade, inside hallway that you walk down into the basement. Wait, walked into the club. Now this entire building is painted black. Outside on the facade, inside hallway that you walk down into the basement. Oh, what is this building? This is so intriguing. About wanting to travel, you said I should go, but for a short time, and I wound up going to Maine for a few months to work, and it was just what I needed. Oh, that's excellent. I'm happy to hear that, Liz. That's so cool. Yeah, I think another reason that I want to try to do some live readings again is simply because in the months that I've kind of been mostly absent from live streaming, I've, of course, continued to study tarot and astrology. It's like just because I'm not live streaming doesn't mean I'm not continuing my studies of tarot and astrology, in my own personal life or whatever. And I feel like at this point, I can put together significantly more connections in readings than I could before. And so I'd really like to test out my new skills in some more live tarot readings. So I'll probably try to work up the courage to do that sometime soon. Oh, and also let you guys in on a little secret since you're here right now. I'm thinking of also going back to the model of doing the readings for a donation of any amount, just let people pay whatever, even though sometimes it felt like people were abusing that system just a little tiny bit, and it started to feel just awkward to me. But I don't know, that one worked the best overall. So, and then I feel like people with other currencies, like from other countries who are not using US dollars feel like they maybe can't get a reading so easily. Like if I say, oh, it has to be like $5 or $10 or whatever. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to change it back to that. Like tarot readings for donations of any amount. Whatever. Let people pay what they want. I'm not guaranteeing that, but I'll probably end up doing that, I'm thinking. So back to Ryan's story. I get down there and I walked into the bathroom, and inside the men's room, at least, there was satanic artwork on the walls. Not like graffiti, but legit Baphomet crosses and goat skulls, etc. So I was immediately excited. After checking out the cool art, I went and talked to the cute girl at Coat Check, and she was very welcoming. Explained that yes, they are a more occult-focused nightclub. Oh, I see. Interesting. So wait a minute. So like was it primarily satanic, or was it like occult focused, including some satanic symbolism, like you're probably about to tell us? That's one thing that kind of, this isn't exactly related to that, but it just reminded me a little bit. One thing that kind of grinds my gears is whenever I say the word occult to someone and they think I'm saying like either cult or a cult or something like that. So annoying. But I know they don't mean to, but still. This is interesting though. So Ryan, is like you stumbled into like a satanic or a cult nightclub. Well, their logo for the club is in the middle of a hand's palm, which is inside of triangle, includes the inverted cross. Definitely sounds very occult. Yes. I've seen that symbol like a number before. Oh shit. It says my connection's unstable. Am I back? Guess I better find out quick. Am I here? 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 Okay, good. I guess it was just momentarily cutting out. Really enjoyed the place. We'll be going back in the future for sure. Huh. Yeah, that's cool. So like you literally just sort of stumbled into this place. Well, as I always explain to people in these sorts of situations, you were a match to it. You were a match to it, and thus, therefore, you came right to it, or it came right to you, depending on how you look at it. All right, you guys, it's been fun. Unless you have any other comments or questions, I think I'm going to get going for the night. It's very welcoming, not too pricey for drinks, and opens its doors at a reasonable time. Cool. Huh. I wish there was like some like astrology or tarot themed place around here. That'd be cool. Like go to that. Maybe I should start like an astrology meetup. I guess that's what a lot of astrologers do, unless there's already one around here, but I doubt it. Kind of in the middle of nowhere. Have a good night. I definitely try to get another reading if you do a live for that again. Thanks, Liz. I appreciate that. And I hope you have a good night also. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe on Wednesdays again, or maybe Fridays. I'm also considering. Because recently I've been considering the astrological rulership of the days of the week. And Wednesday is ruled by Mercury, right? So Mercury communication, making it quite good for giving tarot readings and stuff like that. But Friday is ruled by Venus, sweet, loving, abundant, indulgent Venus. And so that would also make that day theoretically a good day for readings. A good day for all kinds of things, really. Thursday and Friday ruled by the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, respectively. Same, I would love a reading as well. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that a lot. It's a Canadian federal election tonight, so I'll be tuning into that soon. Interesting. Yeah, I've been following politics a little more closely as of late. Though I'm not really going to talk much about it, if at all, like publicly, at least not at this time, because I know how divisive it can be. But let's just say I find I find this whole Trump impeachment thing very fascinating and interesting, and you can probably imagine why. And so I'm following that fairly closely, like not super obsessively closely, but usually at least once a day I'm checking out something about that. All right, so let's see. We miss you, Mr. Poetic, and hope you keep feeling better. Ava Satanis. Thanks, Ryan. I miss you guys as well. Like, don't think that I don't go live because I don't want to talk to you. It's nothing like that. I haven't been going live because of my health and crap like that. So, but I think we can maybe be cautiously optimistic that it's improved enough that I can start going live a little more often, but I can't make any guarantees. But all right, thanks again, you guys. I'll try to come back soon with a live tarot reading stream / astrology readings. So thanks again for being here and have a great night.